All right, so this is a thing that I think like needs to be talked about because yeah. So for those that don't know, there's a thing of like not requiring voter ID to vote. I don't agree with that at all, right? So a voter ID, for those who are wondering, is just like a form of state ID that like once you prove when you prove a couple things, right? um and you get it and it's free, right? So like a state ID, right, is it gives you voter ID, right? A driver's license gives you voter ID, right? I feel like that, I think that's what it really is, right? um a lot of people aren't educated, and most people probably have IDs, so they fall for the voter ID as, oh, I need a new ID to vote. No, you don't. If you have a state ID, you have a voter ID, right? And I feel like that's the thing. People are talking about like all this, but they're not actually talking about it as like what it actually is, and that's a problem, right, of communication from like the you need voter ID to vote thing, because most people who are against voter ID don't even know that they're actually principally for it. They think that they have to get a separate identification to vote, when in real, and they already know how hard it is to get a state ID, right? Because state IDs are a little painful to get to. They don't know it's actually easier to get a voter ID than a state ID, and they know like, hey, well, this is kind of okay. I need to prove this, I need to prove that, and I need to prove that I live here, and that's it, right? Like the this is like that you have like your social security number, right? The that is that you have like your proof of citizenship, right? So a birth certificate, right, is proof of citizenship, right now in the United States. And then another example of proof of citizenship is like if you're foreign, there's another form of proof of citizenship, obviously, right? So you have the birth certificate is one example, and there's other examples as well, right? Um, what you need to prove, of course, is your name, your date of birth, your legal presence, which really just means that you're here legally, which obviously a birth certificate is that, and also the name and the date of birth. So that's already that, right? You need to prove identity. So like, who are you now? Like if you can either have an old ID or your social security card. That works for that. With like your state residency, um, and then name change if you've changed your name before, right? So like the name that you have, and then the name you had at birth, and so like those can all be basically proven extremely easily, right? Um, and then your residency, like, hey, a bill or something, right? And that's it. That's all you need for an ID, and that counts as voter ID, right? So if you're going to get an ID for a bank or something, which a lot of people do, you already have voter ID, right? I think like people just don't know that that's actual voter ID, right? An ID from the state is voter ID. If you have an ID from the state, it's voter ID. If you have a driver's license, it's voter ID, right? So like I feel like people don't get, because it's not being communicated, that that's actually what voter ID is. It's a lesser ID than you already have that only grants the right to vote, while these other IDs grant other rights, right? It's like one grants, rights to certain things like bank accounts and phones and stuff, from companies, as well as like certain services and stuff, by the state. And then a driver's license also allows you to drive in that state, right? And a few other things too. Like, you get a hunting license would probably count as well, right? I don't actually know. Like, I don't know what the requirements on a hunting license is, but I'm pretty sure. Like, basically, if the requirements are more, are all the same plus some, it counts as a voter ID. And the only difference between a state ID and a voter ID is a voter ID is free. So and a ID is like $8 in most states. So like that's kind of the thing, right? Do you have $8 to get a state ID? and the information you need for a state ID, then you're already Gucci. You can vote. You're there, right? Um, so yeah, I think people need to communicate more of what they actually need, because I think the government doesn't do that on purpose, though. Because it's, a lot of it is partially a scare tactic, right? Like voter ID laws, like why don't you have voter ID laws, right? Because it's so easy to get one if you're a citizen. And if you're not a citizen, it's still, if you're like a immigrant on a visa, right? Why are you voting? Why are you voting, right? Like if you don't live here. And if you're an immigrant that became a citizen, right? Um, then yeah, you can vote, right? Because you live here, right? Like the thing is, if you don't live here, if you can't prove that you live here, why do you live here, right? Like if you're not doing the things to prove that you live here, why do you live here, right? And like this is the thing, it's all like just proof of living here. Now I do think though, here's the thing, like there's undocumented and illegal immigration. I don't really get this though. Like if you physically have a house, that should count as citizenship. Like I'm gonna be honest, like people say that should count as citizenship. If you can buy a house in your name with all your information, how the fuck are you illegal? Like that's what I want to know. Like there are illegal immigrants who have property in the United States in their name that they bought. What's illegal about them then? Right? They're paying taxes, they have a place here, right? And it's the same with like the asylum seekers, right? Like they weren't here illegally though. Like they got here, right? They're not really undocumented because that where they're there. I don't get like a lot of this, but like there are people who do cross illegally, right? But they don't own property and they just commit crimes, right? Yeah, like those guys can be deported. But if you purchase property, right? Once you purchase property, like constitutionally, it's the same with like birthright. You're there. Like, what are we talking about? You own property there. Like you're paying taxes on property, but you don't live. But you're not allowed to live here. The fuck, like what bullshit is that, right? So like I feel like we need to go to constitution. If you have property, you live here, right? Like you live here, and that's what citizenship is, right? We should need to go back to that like standard of both standards, right? If you're born here, and you still live here, you're a citizen. And if you buy property here, you're a citizen, right? Like that's what it is, right? If you don't own any property, you're an immigrant of our country, but citizenship should be if you've actually own land here. Right? Like you can't get a government position, but you can, you're still a citizen. I feel like we need to just get back to that, right? Like not it has to be one or the other or another or another or another. Like let's get to the if you have something, if you're paying like get what I mean, then you live here, right? And then you're a citizen, unless you break the laws and stuff otherwise, right? Um, and that's the thing. Like people say, "But that's open borders." Then, right? Yeah, but the thing is, open borders doesn't mean no border security. It means that if you are not committing a crime besides crossing the border, which shouldn't be a crime, right, on itself, right? But like you should still document who comes in, right? The good way to say it, right? If we make sure we know who's coming in and who's coming out, right? We have documentation on that, right? So they're not undocumented. So we know who is doing what and probably where they live at any time, right? So now it's like you obey our laws, you get some property, we're Gucci, right? And then what that does is it prevents like things like the cartels and stuff from doing anything, because now we're paying attention to them. See, this is why I'm like the whole like deport. Like they aren't even deporting illegals; they're deporting asylum seekers. Now people abuse that asylum process clearly, but they're not even here illegally. They're here on asylum, which is a legal process. You know, so like people are talking about all sorts of things. They aren't even here illegally in the sanctuary cities. Um, I feel like people forget that. Like, sanctuary cities are not illegal immigrants. They are legal immigrants who are here from asylum seeking programs. And now some of them are not actually doing what they need to do. And we can deport those particular people, right? But people are acting like, oh, we're letting them stay here for seeking asylum, therefore they're illegal. Like, what? That's not how that works, right? Asylum seeking needs to be venerated. It needs to be examined. We need to make sure that they're actually following the laws. Absolutely. We need to pay attention to that. But the mere act of seeking asylum isn't the problem. Especially since we already made that legal, right? You can't make something illegal retroactively and call someone a criminal for something that was already legal before, um, when they did it, right? It's not how actual functional societies work, right? It has to be illegal and then they have to do it, right? Again, right? Like later, right? But yeah. And yeah, like you can look up like the things as well, right? All right. So like here's like how you get an ID, right? So I'm gonna go like through like my state's things, right? So we have we have the name and date of birth, right? So one thing that can actually work, right? Literally is just having a state ID that hasn't expired before. Um, Birth certificate, right? Also works, right? Um, and yeah, another thing, like, did you know that we have U.S. immigrants from U.S. territories that we don't count as citizens? Like, they like you can be Puerto Rican, right, and not be a U.S. citizen, but you're part of the United States effectively. But because we make you a that's the dumbest part, like about territory stuff, right? Like Japan and Puerto Rico are U.S. territory, so it should just be legal, right? Like, but you still have a bunch of processes that you have to do. But like in the EU, right, in the European Union, like anyone from Europe can go to other places in Europe just fine, right? Because they're part of that union, they're part of that territory, right? The European Union is basically the United States, right? Because they're all in a union, right? You can immigrate to them all, right? That's what the union means effectively. And it's like the same with the Union of the United States, right? We're a union, not a nation. We are 51 nations. We are one union, right? Just like Europe is however many, European Union is however many European nations united under one union, right? Like the EU is effectively like the US in that regard. Like they have their own laws, their own etc. Right? Just like the United States. Like it's the European Union is a different form of like a different like example of the United States, really. All right, but yeah, like so for like proof of identity, just like any ID from anywhere in the United States, right? And yeah, your social security card, etc. Right? That works. Well, tax documents as well, like anything really, right? Um, Now, proof of citizenship, if you're an immigrant, is like just like paper. It's just a few papers and or even a card, right? And if you're not, you just proof that you're a U.S. citizen. It's usually like if you have like the other things, you have that, right? Like birth certificate, another state ID, etc. Yeah, and then like residency is like a bill or something. It can even be your phone bill. So yeah. It can be like a report card from your school too if you're a kid, or you have a kid, or like it's a college or something. It's a lot of documents that you can have, and some can be copies. Others have to be like the original. Like a deed has to be an original deed, right? Um, right? Like your rental agreement has, if you're, or deed or mortgage has to be an original agreement. You can't have a copy. You can have a copy of your mobile phone bill, or like another form of license or something too, right? Like the cool thing about like knowing what like the proof of these things is that it's pretty easy. And yeah, I'm recording with the screen off, but like, yeah, I'm looking these up for my state. Now, for other states, it's different, but like these are not that hard, right? Now, immigration is actually a pain in the ass to do, right? This is my thing. Like the Immigration Bureau, right? Visa application, immigration visa application. It's a problem with like the stuff, right? So it's a process, right? It takes time. So we're going with like the time it takes, right? So you have to submit a petition, right? So like, oh wow, right? Like already kind of scary, right? So it's a form of that, right? Right, and that petition gets approved, right? So then we have another thing where you like engage in the MVC processing, right? And that requires a lot of stuff. Then you pay money, right, for the application itself. So yeah, that's a lot of things. So you have to submit the petition, have it like go through the like, and then advocate for the processing of that petition, and then you pay a fine, right? And then like just for processing your petition. Then you have to have like someone from the states to be an advocate of support, or like an ambassador or whatever, right? Someone has to, from both your state and theirs, support your immigration to the country. Um, it's like that. Then you need financial documents. Then it's pretty easy. We're not gonna go with like that. That's pretty easy. And then you do another online application. So you have all this on paper, and then you have to do an online application, right? And then you have an interview, right? You have to do an interview for that, right? Which will allow your visa. You'll know if your visa was approved or anything, right? From that interview. And then this is the thing, like your visa would already be approved at this point, right? And then so you have another interview after you've already been approved, and you have to prepare for another interview where you, at the end of that interview, you submit documents. Oh no, wait, no, wait, no. Okay, never mind. They do this. Oh wait, they do this in a different way. Okay, never mind. After the interview, you're Gucci. Sorry. Apparently, so I'm looking at this. They have it in a circle instead of like up, like left to right, left to right. Okay, so I'm doing this wrong. Never mind. After the interview, you're Gucci. But like you have your civil document. So remember, you're already approved for the visa. At this point, right? You collect your civil documents from your home country. You have to scan them all. It's pretty easy. That's not hard. And then you submit them again, right? Online. Then you have an interview, and then after that, you're Gucci, right? That's immigration. Now, the problem with immigration, right, is three things. One, you have to pay before you even start really start the process. Because like after your MVC is processed for the visa, you have to pay a fee there. You also have to pay a fee on the online application. They don't list that, but you do. So you have to pay fees twice, right? That's not the real issue, though. The real issue is that the interview, afterwards, right? The interview, you do the interview, right? And you do everything there, and then you get approved. Here's the thing, right? You get your visa approved, right? You think, oh, I'm Gucci there. No. When you get the visa approved, you have another thing. You have the CBT that you have to go through. CBP that you have to go through, the Customs and Border Protection, right? You might assume, unfortunately incorrectly, that this long process that you did, took a couple of months, is enough. But despite having all the paperwork and the visa, right, you have to go through one little last hurdle. And this is the problem with immigration and why there's so many illegal immigrants here. So I'm going to show you like this one, right? Like this isn't my state. I'm not doxing myself for this one, right? At least not yet. So we're going to go here, right? So there's another system once you get here, right? And these are the things, right? So we have admission into the United States. So we have an inspection process after you're already here. Once you have your visa, right? So you have your visa. You said you can be here from both countries. Now we have a bureau that decides other things, right? And that bureau has a few things, right? So if you're bringing food, like just food, right? Certain things can be done to prohibit your application. And have I-94 and I-94W. This is where this is where 99% of the fuck ups happen. Like this is what I'm saying, like how late it is like into the process of when these things can fail, right? And these are just little forms of you're here or there, right? And like there are little dates and stuff. That's okay. But then we have this one, right? Then we have this one, right? It's just a last minute check, right? So you have a final case called a save case check. And there's another case you have to do where you have to have this done while in the doing the thing here with the CBP. You have to have this done, right? This can be overturned regardless. They will try to say like, no, they can overturn you here at any point for no reason. Because they just forgot or something. Charlie has had problems with this before as well, right? This is like legitimately why legal immigration is not like a thing most people can do, because this is a thing where people will just say no at this stage, and because it's a 3-letter bureau, their word goes against everything else, right? So it goes against the state's word, the federal government's word. It goes against the ambassador for you's word. It goes against the sponsor for you's word. It goes against every single other person's word in the letter of the law. But this one asshole said no, and therefore it's no, right? The problem is that some of these guys are just doing it to be fucking assholes, because they want you to have to resort to other means, and they don't want to do their job. Because these guys, their job is literally, the job of these guys, right? Is just, it is basically, so like, yeah, here we go, right? It's just to verify stuff, right? So, they literally just have to scan and approve. So once everything's done, you've already had them scan multiple times, right? This is the final boss, though. They scanned them. They were approved by every other agency, including the federal government, right? And the state that you're in. Everything is Gucci. It's not Gucci to these guys. Why? Because they don't want to do their job. They don't even scan the documents, really, is what it happens to be 99% of the time. This is a organization that pretty much Save is pretty much what actually causes most of these issues, because this is a final check scan after you've already done all these other scans. Now this should already be a red flag. Why do you have to do scans when you're already here? Right? You've already been approved of here. You're already actually physically here. What the fuck is this shit for? And the reason this is for is a lot of commies want you to have to resort to being here illegally. The reason for this is to prevent the government from allowing you in, so when you're already here. That's what this is for. They don't. This is where most people they aren't doing their jobs. You're already here. You could literally walk on U.S. soil anyway. You've already been approved legally, but you aren't illegally here until you go through this. And these guys will try to deny you for the most minuscule of excuses every single time. This is legit the actual problem with U.S. immigration. Is that this organization exists to prevent the long process you already went through from being considered legal, because people don't want to do their jobs, right? Now, like, this is like the organization themselves isn't the issue, even though you already been scanned once before, like all these things before and were scanned and approved before you got here and then after you got here, and then these guys are just another layer of assholes. But these are a final layer of assholes you have to deal with once you're already physically here, by the way, to be a legal immigrant. Right? And another thing, right? If you do it all and they disapprove you for a certain amount of time, you're already here, right? And you are just need them to sign. After a certain amount of time, you're already, like, you're booted out, but you're still illegal, right? But you're in the country. So you get the issue here. Like, they just boot you out. Like, this is not a police owned station. So, like, if you stay there, you go to jail. But if you don't stay there, you won't be legal. So it's illegal to try to not break the law. But it's also illegal to just stay in here. But you can't go back because you can't go on the airports to go back because you're not illegal. See, this is the trap. This right here. Save is a fucking scam. And the reason it's a scam is they don't want to do their fucking jobs. That's all it is. People don't want to do their jobs, and this is the final boss of U.S. immigration, right? So many people who are here in every legal way except this one are booted into illegal immigration status because of this fucking piece of shit. It is remembered, right? Like, when people talk about, like, illegal immigration, this is where, like, most of the illegal immigrations are happening. And they're talking about, like, oh, we formed 21.5 million verifications, right? And you gotta think, right? Wait, there's only 20 million illegal immigrants here. Is there even, like, that many, like, legal immigrants? Like, because wouldn't the illegal be more, right? So how is there 21 verifications and 20 million illegal immigrants? Right? Well, those verifications. Right? Let's say they do more than one per person. Now you're seeing the problem. They're delaying it so they can keep you illegal. These aren't they aren't verifying you're here. They're doing the verification process. This is how many times they've performed the process. That's not how many people they've verified. That's how many people they performed the process on. So they've performed it on over the amount of illegal immigrants and legal immigrants in the country. Notice the problem here. It means that anytime a large portion of the non-harmful illegal immigrants are because these guys didn't do their job. And this is why I don't like the government solutions, because the government is the problem here. The government just does their job here, and we are Gucci. Like about 10 million of them are probably like just legal immigrants in all but name because of SAVE. That's why I don't trust the system. Because the system has shit like this as a final boss. So yeah.